But our budget is a strategic and integrated plan, taking a longer-term view and setting out our strategic challenges clearly and plainly. This way, we can ensure a fiscally sustainable and secure future for Singapore. For this decade, from 2011 to 2020, we are on a sound fiscal footing. That is because we planned ahead early and made the necessary moves well before the decade began. We raised GST from 5% to 7% as early as 2007 and introduced the Net Investment Returns or NIR framework in 2008. These changes allow us to enhance our healthcare, transport, and social support systems in the first half of the decade, from 2011 to 2015. During this period, we introduced MediShield Life and the Pioneer Generation Package, and enhanced workfare. In 2015, we made further revenue moves to include Temasek in the NIR framework and raise personal income tax rates to the top income brackets. These changes enable us to sustain our spending for the second half of the decade, from 2016 to 2020. All in all, we were able to fund a significant increase in overall government expenditures from $55.0 billion in FY 2011 to an estimated $89.1 billion in FY 2018. As the government has stated before, we have ensured that we have sufficient resources to meet our spending needs till 2020. This is a result of careful and prudent planning. But in the next decade, between 2021 to 2030, if we do not take measures early, we will not have enough revenues to meet our growing needs. We expect our spending needs to continue growing across all sectors, with some rising faster and more than others. Let me highlight a few. One of the key areas of expenditure growth will be healthcare. Since the start of this decade, we have more than doubled our healthcare spending, from $3.9 billion in FY 2011 to an estimated $10.2 billion in FY 2018. This increase went into building and operating more hospitals and other healthcare facilities and enhancing healthcare subsidies. In the coming decade, with an aging population and an increasing chronic disease burden, the demands on families and government will rise. We need to spend even more on healthcare. Today, the average annual government healthcare subsidies received by an elderly person is more than 6 times that of a younger person, or about $4,500 more. By 2030, the total number of elderly will increase by about 450,000 to 900,000. We'll have to build new healthcare capacity to meet the rising demand and also invest in new medical technologies to improve care quality. Within the next 5 years, we will build 6 more general and community hospitals, 4 new polyclinics, and more nursing homes and elder care centers around the island. All in all, we expect our average annual healthcare spending to rise from 2.2% of GDP today to almost 3% of GDP over the next decade. This is an increase of nearly 0.8 percentage points of GDP, or about $3.6 billion in today's dollars. Within the next decade, healthcare spending is expected to overtake education. The government will do its part to spend wisely and ensure greater value for money in our healthcare spending. Everyone has a role to play too, by taking care of our health and saving up for our own and our family's healthcare needs. Another key area of expenditure increase will be infrastructure. We have increased our infrastructure spending from $8.5 billion in FY 2011 to an estimated $20 billion in FY 2018. We're building and upgrading flats, expanding and maintaining our rail and bus networks, and keeping public transport fares low for Singaporeans. Over the next 5 years, the annual subsidies for keeping our buses and trains running will be comparable to the amount we spend on pre-employment training in polytechnics and ITEs. And this does not even include the cost of building public transport infrastructure. Over the next decade, we will need to spend more to develop new infrastructure. We'll expand our rail network by over 100 kilometers, redevelop different parts of Singapore, Jurong Lake District, Punggol Digital District, and Woodlands North Coast, and rejuvenate our aging infrastructure such as water pipes and HDB flats and lifts. We'll also build Changi Airport's Terminal 5 or Changi T5, Tuas Port, and the KL Singapore high-speed rail, so as to ready ourselves for long-term economic trends. These are massive investments to anchor Singapore as a center for economic activity in the region, create jobs, enhance livability, and serve as a foundation for future growth. As my colleague, the Minister for National Development, has said, we are not done building Singapore yet. Third, we'll also have to invest more in security to keep Singapore safe. The terrorism threat to Singapore is at its highest in recent years. The range of threats we face is also wider, from major cyber attacks to online self-radicalization. To counter these threats, we'll need to enhance the operational readiness of our officers, leverage technologies to enhance our response, and partner the community so that we are all well equipped to respond in emergencies. Besides healthcare, infrastructure, and security, we also have to sustain our investments in education to give our young a good start. Even though our student cohorts are falling, we're spending more per child and dedicating more resources to help everyone reach his or her potential. In FY 2018, our education spending is estimated at $12.8 billion. We are investing more in preschool education to give every child a good foundation from a younger age. As PM announced last year, we'll spend $1.7 billion per year on the preschool sector by 2022, double of our annual spending now. We'll continue to invest in lifelong learning to help Singaporeans reskill and upskill so that they can access good jobs and thrive in a new economy. Hence, there is a need to strengthen our fiscal footing to meet these growing expenditure needs and to prepare for any unforeseen ones.